welcome. And the meeting will come back to order. Our recess this morning. I appreciate everyone being here. And you'll see Representative Chairman Northrup is across the hall chairing his Education Committee, so he won't be joining us this afternoon. Okay, so the following bills we have left are House Bill 133, Property Tax Holiday, House Bill 52, Property Tax Homestead Exemptions. Those are kind of similar bills, so I kind of want to hear both those. A lot of the testimony will maybe be similar on those, and then we can work those things and then move on to the next two, 103 and 203. So the first bill up is House Bill 133. Representative Locke, yeah, appreciate you take us through your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This property tax bill, this is something similar I ran last year. And originally, let me talk a little bit about it kind of at the highest level and what its original motivation was for. I originally put this bill together based on 2021 to 2022 numbers, basically, on property tax, where our property tax, that was kind of in that time frame when they were starting to shoot up, and I was starting to get a lot of that feedback that there was people who were hurting, which is nothing new. We've heard that enough, I'm sure. That being said, what at the time, my thinking was we went from about a 1.3 billion property tax. Now that's everything, of course, to exactly, that was everything. Yes, sir. Then in that year jump, it went to about 1.8 billion. So there was about a $500 million additional. As you've said many times, Mr. Chairman, a lot of that was minerals, of course. Roughly about 200 million of it was in the ballpark of some of the property taxes, I think is what the property tax side of that. So that's this bill originally, the way I did it, and I'll walk through the bill, and then I'll talk to it a little bit if you're okay with that. It's pretty simple, but so if you start on, there was really nothing significant on page 1, but when you go to page 2, lines 5, you'll see. Well, let me give a quick qualifier. I actually put a tax holiday component for all 3 pieces of the property tax. So that included the minerals. I appreciate that. Yeah, minerals, industrial, as well as all other. So I'll talk a little bit to that, and I'll give some thoughts on that as well. So if you go to page 2. 5 through 12, basically it describes, and the way I did this, you're going to see some somewhat strange numbers, but basically I tried to do it by taking a couple of months. So if you look first at the very top, the first 2 or 3 lines, you see that the amount of tax under this paragraph shall be reduced by 16.67 hundredths. I know that's painful. For property in the industrial, all that does is that works to, for lack of a better term, a 2-month holiday. So that's all that does. So the next part of that was for the all other, and I basically, you'll see there it's 33% of the for the holiday. I weighted this a little heavy. So I weighted it toward the all other category at the time, trying to, for lack of a better term, trying to give residential people leave some money in their pocket is what this was an attempt to do. Not put money back, but leave some money there. And that's where that was going. And then if you go to the bottom of that page, page 2, that's where we see the minerals. And I went through this calculation, and it obviously is a bit painful and worded a little different, but similarly, it's that 16.67%. So that's really all there was to the bill, was this concept that says, hey, we pulled a lot in, there's some people hurting, let's have a tax holiday, put some money, leave some money in people's pockets. I would argue this is very much taking a relief approach, leaving some money in the pockets. My belief on relief is twofold. Obviously, the people need it, but as you know, we leave money in their pocket. They stimulate things too. So it was largely based on that general thinking. I think, so that's what the bill was all about. If I can take it kind of another step into this, and I'll hit the fiscal note fairly quickly. No surprise on the fiscal note. It was big and it was sort of expected to be. The one thing I failed to say is this was set as a one-year sunset. So this was just a one-time relief, get some relief into people's pockets. That's how this bill was designed to be used. You can see, obviously, the fiscal note is big and scary. It was in some ways meant to be at the time. It's changed a little bit from when I first built it out. When I did it last year, I was kind of targeting that roughly about 100 to 150 million range. It ended up being a little higher. Of course, when I reran it this year, it jumped a bit. So the thing I would like, sorry, Mr. Chairman, any questions on what I've said so far? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I was thinking about with this bill this year, I put it in so we could discuss it more than anything and talk about it. And part of it was, as we have discussed many times, I think we've hit on this. We've looked at several bills that have the potential for reform, right? And in fact, I think we've at least put one bill through that's starting to go down that reform path. Where I think we're still short is what I would refer to as relief. Where can we leave a little money in people's pockets? And I'm focusing obviously on, and I know I might have said this way too many times to this group, but I'm focusing on that group of folks that their property taxes have shot up that 80 or 100%. They're looking for something that kind of gets them back on a glide path. Adding a 5% cap on something that's already very high hurts. So I'm looking for something that leaves a little bit in their pocket so we can start making some legitimate. So the actual reform gets us on a glide path that's right, and maybe some relief that gets us to where people aren't hurting as much. So that's where I was going, and I just wanted to at least bring that up and say I think I'm open to maybe some amendments that might allow us to use this as a tool for relief where it makes sense, where we could maybe make some adjustments, that kind of thing. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for questions.
Okay, members, any questions? Okay, very good. We'll open this up for public comment. So come on up, introduce yourselves, and we'd welcome your public comment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I apologize for my absence this morning.
Pull that a little closer. There you go.
Thank you. Sounds like you had very productive meetings this morning. So, Brenda Henson, Director of the Department of Revenue. As stated, this looks like a fairly simple concept. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our tax structure and our tax calendar. So each year, county assessors, Department of Revenue, we do this valuation process, and that's the basis of that property tax. But throughout all of our statutes is the budget process that all the taxing entities have to go through. I've stated this before, budget divided by assessed value is how your mill levy is calculated. As I read this bill, so let me finish that budget process. So assessors certified their local assessed values. We certify our values to the state board no later than June 1st. We have other statutes that say those are the certified values that have to be utilized to determine the mill levies for that particular tax year. All of the different entities have statutes that say, a fire district can levy up to 3 mills on taxable value. Counties can levy up to 12 mills. Our schools, the school foundation must levy 12 mills. We've got all of these statutes and other places of the Green Book that provide the imposition piece for these entities to tax for property tax. Mill levies are established the first Monday in August, tax bills go out in September. If I'm reading this bill accurately, somewhere at the end, the county treasurer, because this applies to a tax, not the assessed value. This is actual tax. So somewhere after tax rolls provided to the county treasurer, this calculation then would be made to reduce the amount of the tax in the bill that they actually send to the taxpayer. However, keeping in mind that because we've got all these other statutes, if I'm the community college out here and I have a bond that I have to repay, principal and interest divided by assessed value is the mill levy that it's going to take to pay that payment. If the county treasurer then takes these percentages off of every class of property, that taxing entity now cannot pay their principal and interest, if I'm understanding the concept accurately. Then if I go on down to the monthly ad valorem, as you know, we've been collecting an estimated monthly ad valorem on minerals since January of 2022. So for example, production on 2023, we collected an estimate. We'll certify the assessed value for 2023 production by the end of May 2024, and that will be included in the tax bills and in the tax roll for 2024. And then the county treasurers must reconcile after the mill levies are established in August. How much was paid, how much should have been paid. But keep in mind, all that money is distributed to those taxing entities already. So to the tune of, in 2023, we have already collected and sent almost get the right number here, almost 700 million dollars to taxing entities. And the way the schools operate right now is when they get that money, they spend that money because we've changed those laws for them. They run on a cash flow. There are a lot of moving pieces to property tax. And any changes that we make to the valuation side, I really encourage this body to do those early on. But to basically ignore the budget process and simply come to the end and say, taxpayers, you get a relief, that's fine. But you've got school districts, community college, improvement and service districts, fire districts that have bills to pay. So I just ask that you are cautious. This bill says to the extent taxes on mineral production in the calendar year 2024. So we'll start collecting taxes on minerals and remitting those to all those entities in 2 months because they have to report and submit the third month after the month of production. Those entities are already receiving those monies. So there are just a lot of moving parts here. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Representative Zwanitzer has a question.
Thanks. And it's more about the system, because I know you were a former assessor. Is it possible to program in like a 1-month property tax holiday? I know this bill contemplates a year, but I'm just thinking over the course of the year, is there any way in the system to just give, 30 days of relief?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Zwanitzer, so county treasurers collect property tax. They don't do it monthly. They collect property taxes, first payment due by November 10th, second payment due by the 10th of May, the year following them. Even on the estimated ad valorem, even though their producers are paying an estimated amount, it's not, it's got to be reconciled the year after the production based on those mill levies. Keep in mind, those mill levies were calculated based on budget divided by assessed value as a mill levy. So all of those are moving pieces. If we paid our property tax on a monthly basis, and I think that that was something that was considered historically, that could be a possibility. But right now, you've got taxing entities that are, their budget expects, so if it's 2024 property tax, because the first half's due November of 24, second half due in May of 25, fiscal year 25 is when 2024 property taxes are collected.
Icon? Any other questions? Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else would like to comment? Any other public comment on this bill? Okay. Oh, we have online comment. Okay, let's
Yes, sir.
move online. County Treasurers Association?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you. You have your seatbelt on. That's a good thing.
Good morning. Actually, I guess good afternoon, Revenue Committee and Mr. Chairman, Emily Parvasini, Sublette County Treasurer. Hello from the rest area outside Rollins and in the middle of a snowstorm, but I felt it was very important to weigh in on this bill. So as the County Treasurers Association has visited briefly about House Bill 133, we do have some things, and I think that Director Henson covered a majority of that, in that we will already be collecting ad valorem for 2024 production very soon, in just a couple of months. And as the tax bills come to us, they roll over from the assessor's office, they generate a bill that's mailed out by our printing companies. So there's really no way for us to forgive a 30-day period of tax or a 2-month period of tax for residential, as the bills have already been generated, the budgets have, already been set. And so there's not really a way for us to practically do that. And the same with the ad valorem. So if we were to use it against our true up that we have in September, it would be, again, sort of like an NOVC, in that we would figure out if they've overpaid or underpaid. And if they have overpaid, and we take into consideration this return of funds, because we would have already collected it, it would go against the schools, the districts, the county, and everyone and any entity that gets those funds when we distribute them, because we don't hold them. And, it's a really heavy lift for county assessors and county treasurers for something that's just a one-time deal. It doesn't really solve the long-term problems that we have. So our association is not in favor of this bill. We feel that there are other property tax relief and reform bills that are much better and much easier to implement, to actually make them work. And I would stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions for the treasurer? Okay, well, thank you. I think we don't see any questions by the committee, and safe travels home to Sublette County.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment? Okay, we're going to close public comment. Members, we're on House Bill 133. What's your pleasure, members? Okay, it's been moved by Representative Bear, seconded by Representative Locke. Okay, we'll work through the bill. Are there any amendments? We'll go right to page 2. Any amendments on page 2? Okay, and you can see the industrial 16.67, and then all the other category 33.3, and then down on line 22, 16.67 for minerals. Okay, and that 39, 13, 113. Okay, any amendments? Then over page 3, any amendments? Okay, see no amendments. Are there amendments? Okay, yeah, any comments? Go ahead. Why don't you
Sorry.
wrap it up? You're the
Mr.
sponsor of the bill. Any other
Yeah,
comments?
sorry, Mr. Chairman, and I want to talk about maybe amendments here, and I want to at least open up the conversation if.
Sure, sure.
If we're willing to even consider them. If it would be more palatable, if you will, to, for example, remove a couple of these categories and maybe stick to the one that we're hurting at the most, if that's something of value, I think I would welcome that conversation if it's something people are willing to do. The other thing that I would like to consider, and I would make a motion, I know that at the county levels, there's going to be obviously a fairly significant amount of pressure, and we'd need to discuss that other issue of whether dropping a couple of categories makes it more palatable to this body. If it doesn't, that's fine. If it does, I would propose an amendment, and I'm not doing it at this moment, I'm just in conversation, if you will. I would propose an amendment that maybe we do something to the effect of a 60% backfill for the counties, if that's something that made it something easier to do. Again, strategy here, or at least the design of the bill, I just want to try to leave something in people's pockets, and let's see if we can to give a little stimulus from that perspective. So I wanted to open that conversation and see what the comments were.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess somewhat in response to that and just in general, I'll be a no vote on this. I think, succinctly put, the director does a nice job. You can't just in whatever manner, just drop the revenue without the answer for the people depending on that revenue. Simply put. And then as far as the kind of the second part, we also heard that the administration would be difficult to untenable. So I just don't think this is the route to get there regardless of amendments. So I'll be a no vote.
Any other comments? Okay, I'm going to take it back to the sponsor. Go ahead. You got any final comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I just wanted this body to still stay focused on, we need to find relief somewhere. Thank you.
Okay, no amendments then? Okay. Okay, I think we're calling the roll then. Question being called on House Bill 133.
Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
No.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Northrup, oh, yes. Representative Northrup, Representative Northrup cast a no vote in absentee. Representative Oakley,
No.
Representative Storer,
No.
Representative Strock,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer,
No.
and Chairman Harshman.
No.
The bill has failed with 6 no votes and 3 aye votes.
Okay, the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 52. House Bill 52. Now, I see the prime sponsor is not here. I see a co-sponsor here, Allred Berger. Byron is a co-sponsor. So one of you, maybe you gentlemen,
He's already up and moving.
he's up and moving. Welcome, Representative Byron. Please take us through this bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the committee, House Bill 52. We've seen this in a formal last year. I think the good speaker improved it a bit, but similar to what we've been talking about a fair amount today. Starting on page 1, obviously 1 through 4, you can read that. Establishing homestead exemption for primary, penalty for false claims. It does have a sunset in it, which I think is important to talk about if we get to that part of it. And then categories. So if you get to page 2, you can get to page 11, or excuse me, line 11, page 2, category stating that if you're 64 years of age, you have a $50,000 exemption on your fair market value of your primary, Jumping up to line 16, 65 years of age, between 65 and 74, you go to 100. Line 22, going on page 2, going on to page 3, 75 years of age or older on January 1 of the applicable tax year. You have $150,000 exemption of fair market value. Goes into some more language on line 5. It only applies to the same property, including property that your house shall apply to the same property in any year, including the property that houses more than one family. No owner should claim more than one exemption in any year. And some definitions on page 3, line 19. And then going into page 4, line 1, just some more language to clarify the previous couple pages. I think as you hop over to page 5, committee, obviously more definitions, but there is an appropriation in there. And then into page 6, there's the sunset in there. So with that, this is the Good Speakers Bill. It came before us last year. Once again, to the good bringer of the former bill, I think it's looking at that quick and concise and prescriptive help that our communities are asking us for, and do appreciate that it has the sunset.
The co-sponsor of the bill. Okay, members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to open it up to public comment. Any public comment on this bill? House Bill 52. Go ahead, introduce yourself and
Good afternoon,
welcome
Mr.
your
Chairman,
comments.
members of the committee. My name is Dixie Huxtable. I am the Converse County Assessor and currently serving as the Legislative Chair for the Wyoming County Assessors Association. Specific to this bill, we've talked a lot about how our association met and talked, and exemptions was one of the positive things that most of the assessors could support. And specific to this bill, as we understand it, it creates an exemption for a portion of a primary residence of a taxpayer. It's age-based with a residence requirement. It does require an application process. And it is backfilled, at least as we interpret it to be a backfilled exemption as long as there's an appropriation approved. Knowing the number of forms that we may be dealing with, we think the timeline of when those forms would be due, if they could be moved up, maybe to March 1st instead of May, the fourth Monday in May. So as long as it's backfilled, it's not as crunching as it could be, because we would not be reducing the abstract amount for that because it's going to be backfilled. If for some reason there wasn't backfill or something happened to that, then I'd just like to consider that any of these bills that have applications, getting them in the fourth Monday in May and having us have our abstracts in the 1st of June is constraining to us. So anytime that there is the application process, and this one is specifically coming to the county assessor's office, it is on page 3, where it talks about submit a claim to the assessor not later than the fourth Monday in May. And again, it's kind of a cautionary statement. As long as it's backfilled, we can do this because we would not be adjusting the abstract amount. But if it should for some reason not be, or there would not be an appropriation, that would be a problem. One of the other questions that we had on page 5, where it defines primary residence, it states that they are claiming that they actually reside a majority of the year. I'm presuming that's one day over half. So as long as that's on the affidavit and they're signing it, just want to make sure that that's clear. And in that same page, that Romanet 3, where it says residential real property means real property improved for a dwelling designed to house not more than 4 family. It includes up to an acre of land where it's located. So we've already had some discussion about an acre of land. But further on, the last sentence in that paragraph, starting on line 9, the dwelling may include any type of residence, including a single-family home, an individual condominium unit, a mobile home, or a trailer if the dwelling is used as a primary residence. I'm a little confused between saying that it can be a 4-family house, and then and when they describe the type of dwelling, we're talking clearly about a single-family residence. So I'm open to either way. I just want to be sure that that's clear, because there was a little confusion for us as to whether or not, whether it was intended to be a multifamily. Mr. Chairman, I agree with that. That's my note right here, a triplex, a fourplex. But then down and below, it talks about a single-family home. So just some clarity would probably help for us in administrating it. With an effective date of January 25, we can probably answer most of these questions and work out the issues with the applications. We just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing something there in that multifamily. And then I guess the only other question, nope, I think that was it for this bill. Sorry.
So
The
the
bills are
effective-
starting to run together. I'm sorry.
So the effective January 1st, 2025 is at 24 taxes. Is that the way you read, is that right? It's not, it's 25 taxes. So this is really 26, 27. Is that right? Fiscal year, I'm getting calendar year and fiscal year. Tax year 25, 6, and 7.
Correct.
Fiscal year 26, 27, 28. Gotcha.
Correct.
So why can't we move that up a year?
Mr. Chairman?
I know you just said it, but I want to hear it again.
The application process, this requires the taxpayer to initiate this claim, and it's a application process that respectfully, I don't believe that we could process for the 24 tax year.
Okay. Okay, very good. Any other questions? I guess the part you brought up on page 5, that Roman 3 with the 4 families, maybe you just real property. I mean, that's kind of a different definition. Maybe we can clean it. I know we can clean it up, but just,
Just adopt the language that we've already worked on.
yeah, it's all the same language in all these. We just got to get some of that out.
Residential real property.
Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, I'm kind of talking to myself too here a little bit, but I think we can clean that up a little, work on it. Okay, very good. Any other questions, members of the committee? Okay, anybody else public comment? Sure like to hear from you if you have any public comment on this bill. Okay, no public comment. Is there any online? No online. Okay. Members, what's your pleasure on House Bill 88? Or 52 is what I said.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the bill.
Okay, it's been moved by Representative Byron. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Locke. Okay, let's go to work on this bill, House Bill 52, flipping over to page 2. Are there any amendments? Let's just ask the question, I guess, on the first exemption, homestead exemption for everyone basically under 64, the 50,000 exemption of fair market. Just Little League math, that's probably like $350. Oh, you were giving me the Little League. Okay, I was ahead of you on that.
323?
323, depending what county you're in and how many mills, but statewide average is 68 or whatever that is, and so it'd be a little less, 320, 30, 40 bucks. Okay, and then double that on Roman 2, right? For somebody who's 65, it's just under 700. And then, a little over 1,000, I guess, on the folks who are, and, okay, so that's that part, everybody. Okay, any amendments on 2 or 3? Page 2 or 3, go ahead, Representative Locke.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just amend to increase each of the numbers by 50,000, so, for each one of the categories.
Okay, so the first one would be go to 100 and then 150 and then 200. Okay, I'll second that. Okay, it's actually, we'll let Representative Zwanesser second that. As chairman, I
Oh.
can, but I try not to.
I'd rather not, but I have
Oh,
a
okay, I will.
discussion point
I
on it.
second it. Okay. I just want Ms. Jeffrey to be clear as mud on this. It's moved by Representative Locke and I seconded it, but for discussion. Okay, go ahead, Representative. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, did you want me to explain what I was
Yeah,
looking to
no,
do?
go ahead, what you're thinking and,
Oh, I just wanted to, you can tell I'm big on the relief side of this, and this is a relief. And we could talk about, I know there's a lot of other bills in the pipeline, and I'm just looking to basically leave some money in people's pockets. We could sunset this with other reform that might come out and do something like that, but I thought a little bit extra in people's pockets. In all honesty, when you look at, again, when you look at numbers like 70 to 80% increases in many parts of our state, that's more than $100,000. So,
okay, and.
Thank you.
and, my comment and question, the fiscal note will be a little different. It's not just as easy as doubling the fiscal note, because I think most of them are gonna be in this, you know, in that Roman 1 category, under 65, I would guess. I'm looking around for, but we'll figure that out. Our staff will figure this out. It's obviously, so I don't know if it'll double it, is what I'm saying. It might double it, it might be a little more, I don't know.
So, Mr. Chairman, let me make sure that's part of the motion is that the good representative wants to increase that
Yeah, I
number.
guess that's part of the deal too. You want to increase the appropriation with that? To backfill?
thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that would
Okay.
be, I believe that I should make that part of the motion, correct?
And, okay, very good. So that's a friendly amendment by the second. Okay, so that's, whatever that number is gonna be, it'll at least probably double. But we'll find that out. Okay. It's gonna go to appropriations anyway. We'll find it out. Okay, any other discussion on this amendment? Amendment is to raise these all by 50,000 and to pay for them. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chairman.
Representative Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your, wealth of knowledge on what homes statewide costs, if you take that good county where the mountains are sharp and tall out, if we bring, on page 3, line 1 through 3, if we bring that up to, I believe with this current, motion, that gets up to 200,000 of exemption. And do I recall right, last year, the average home price, if you take Teton County out, was sales price $270,000 in the state of
Around-
Wyoming, right around there?
Around 300. The
300.
average in Wyoming is 390, but that I think includes.
Take us out, yeah.
Zebra.
So you're just looking at about a 66% on those. I mean, the person obviously has to be 75 years of age or older, but, yeah, I mean, I think there'll be a lot of discussion if this bill makes it out of committee on that, and I'm hesitant to support this motion because I don't want to kill the bill that way, but, certainly worth the thought there.
Okay, well, and I think you gotta, the appropriations will have the next say on this bill, obviously, and I don't wanna endanger the bill with them. They can obviously undo what we've done or not fund that piece. But, okay, but it's something certainly to think about. So, yeah, and maybe the director or assessors have that, but 390 is the number in my head was the average. And then without Teton County, it's closer to 3. I'm looking around. Representative Byron said 270. So. Okay, very good. Any other discussion on this motion? Representative Storr.
Just a question, does this bill have a backfill?
It does, yeah.
It does.
88 million, and now that's probably
No,
doubled
just went
if you adopt this amendment.
And that's coming from the general fund, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
Yes. Okay. Any other questions, discussion? Okay, are you ready to vote on this amendment?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No,
I think that amendment passed. Okay, so any other amendments? Any other amendments? Okay, Representative Byron.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 5, line 3. This was talked about during the interim a few times, and I make an amendment to strike after the line, page 5, line 3, strike the words a majority and replace it with 8 months of the year. I'm remembering that from when we were discussing it during the interim, but
Yeah, that's good.
just,
Is there a
just
second?
a thought.
Second by Representative Oakley, 8 months a year residency. So these are Wyoming folks who are owner occupied. Majority is kind of an interesting word sometimes. Okay. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's been adopted. Okay, are there other motions on page 5, amendments? How about this 4-family? Want to try to
Make it 5?
represent Oakley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My motion would be, we've really, and it was in 45, we wrestled with it and we've defined this residential real property and others. So my motion would be to you just take that language from what we've done in that bill, put it here.
Okay. Okay, it's a motion and a second. Probably find that language. You look, we can
You know
probably,
me, I spread out.
was that in the amended language today or the original bill draft? Was it?
No, and I should look at. That makes sense. Didn't we do residential real?
Mike's not on.
Okay, so let's get back on track here. You want to make a motion, go ahead and restate your motion on Roman 3 there.
My motion is that we've been wrestling with this residential real property and we've defined it in previous bills, I believe 45. So my motion, if I'm correct in my assumption that it's in 45, would be to define residential real property as we defined it in HB 45.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that was a single-family residence, now residential real property.
So was it that other bill?
Okay,
Okay.
okay, we'll conform. Okay, so do we have a second?
I did.
Representative Zwanzer, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, so we've cleaned that part up. Are there any other amendments on this? Okay. Is there, what's your pleasure, members?
Wanted this discussion.
Discussion on the bill before we move to vote? Okay, go ahead, Vice Chair Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as this bill goes, I'm going to be a naysayer here, but I'm going to be a no vote. Throughout last year, somebody said this came from last year, but we've spent a lot of time fleshing out these concepts. And so then it becomes just more apparent to me that, in my opinion, there are better vehicles. Age as the single qualifier is just not targeted enough. We've fleshed out our ideas, we've come up with better ones, and I just don't think this is it. I'll be a no vote.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Storr?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am a no vote. We just passed House Bill 3 that gives people over 65 who have lived in the state a long time a 50% tax break on their property tax without any kind of means testing. This bill also provides additional tax relief to elderly people over everyone else. And I just don't think that makes sense, nor is it necessary. So I'll be a no.
Okay, Representative Zwanzer?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I like the bill. I think my problem is the unintended consequence. What this, I believe, will do long-term is attract more and more retirees from other states who have significant income to retire to Wyoming, and knowing they're not going to pay as high a property tax, they will buy nicer houses, which will drive up the market, which will increase the problem we're currently seeing. It's a great marketing campaign, retire to Wyoming, but it's not doing anything good for our demographics, and I think it's going to up the property taxes if you start saying it's cheaper to retire here. A lot of places are going to sell their expensive houses, buy stuff here, and raise everybody's taxes up higher. It's my belief of where this will end up in 5 or 10 years, and we will regret moving the bill.
Okay, any other comments? Okay,
Quick comment.
and I think yeah, go ahead, Representative Byron.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would note, and I appreciate good representative comments, I think that's why there is a sunset built in here, so I just take that under consideration as you begin to process what you're going to say.
Okay, very good.
One
Everybody,
final comment.
second bite at the apple.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just
Store.
in reference to Representative Byron's point, I have yet to see this body want to raise taxes. So even with a sunset, I think the pressure will be to maintain this over the long term, and that is also problematic. Thank you.
Okay. Well, if it passes this committee, it's going to have to work its way through the Appropriations Committee. And so we'll work it there too as well. Okay, so the question's being called. Please call roll on House Bill 52 as amended.
Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye?
Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
No.
Representative Storer,
No,
Representative Strock,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer,
No.
Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
The bill passes with 6 ayes and 3 noes.
Okay, very good. And that'll be a re-referral, Ms. Jeffrey. So that'll definitely be, this bill will be a re-referral, House Bill 52 on our little sheet over there. That we. Okay, the next bill for our consideration, the sponsors here, start making your way up, Representative Alred. It's property tax assessment ratio for residential property, House Bill 103. Welcome to the committee. Please take us through your little bill. Pretty straightforward. This won't take us long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. After we passed the constitutional amendment separating residential property,
Is your mic on, or pull it closer maybe? They're not the most stout mics. Pull it a little closer.
Green.
We believe you. It's
Okay, I
just-
can hear
yeah,
myself
thank you.
now.
Perfect.
Thank you. After passing the constitutional amendment, which separated dwellings out of the taxing category that they were in, I couldn't see any sense in waiting till we meet again. And so this is a trigger bill based on the passage of that constitutional amendment, using the language that was in the bill itself. I asked the LSO if they would write this bill. I questioned them 2 or 3 times on whether it was right or not. And so what it does basically across the state is drop everyone's property taxes from a 9.5% to 8.3%. So I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, and this, my first question, thank you for being here. I'm going to ask a question just, and again, a trigger bill that we can separate residential, the current constitutional amendment that will be on the ballot, to create a 4th class to separate residential from the all other, and this would apply only to residential, and keeping with our constitution to be within 4 points of each other. I see you are, and so this would be like a 12.6% property tax reduction is my little math. Is that what you say?
And that's what I've heard, yes.
Very good, Mr. Allred. Okay, members, any other comments? Go ahead, Representative Watts, or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just any other comment on why we chose 8.3? Is there I mean,
Yeah.
is it a basis? Is
That's
it-
based on
through
the
the
bill
chair.
itself, yes.
What's that, through the
That's-
chair?
That's based on the bill itself that we passed, because I questioned them myself on that. It has to be, as I recall,
4 points or 40%
from the
within each other. So,
industrial
right, that's
percentage,
exactly
yes.
right.
Yes, so it had its limitations based on the constitutional amendment, yes.
So just to make, it's the lowest we can get while still being in the constitutional requirement of that
Absolutely.
4% on industrial? Of the 40. Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay, very good. Okay, any other questions? Sponsor, Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Allred. I want to ask you about your thoughts about how this is going to play out it looks to me like because this doesn't address the problem of these ever-increasing assessments, we're looking at a 12% reduction when this goes into effect for 1 year. We can't go any lower because of the constitutional limitations. And so as assessments continue to rise, if we don't pass some other bill to affect that, this would be a 1-year relief, and then it probably wouldn't do much of anything after that. Would you agree with that?
That's not my understanding.
Let's work through the chair.
Excuse me,
This-
Mr. Chair, thank you. Representative Bear, with the constitutional amendment, is that just a 1-year deal? That's forever, I would think, and I would just think that this would go on with that. Now, it's not as much as I'd like, and I'd like to see it lower. There are some other bills that are coming that hopefully will help with that, but this is I don't think this is a 1-year deal. Am I wrong?
No, it would be ongoing as long as it's in statute. It would be there forever until
you.
somebody changes the statute and raises
Thank you,
it.
yes. Yeah.
Good luck to them. Okay, Representative Bear.
Thank you. Follow up, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
go
This is just for clarification purposes for everybody who hears this. So you would have this 12+% reduction in year 1, but if your assessment continues to rise, it would wipe out that 12% in year 2 or 3 and so on. And so you would eventually not see the effect as a taxpayer of that 12% year after year after year. That's my point. It doesn't quite address the problem of an ever-increasing assessment as these cap bills seem to do, where we're addressing the assessment itself.
I would.
Hopefully that helps.
I would
Go
have
ahead,
to
work
agree
through the
with,
chair.
excuse me, Mr. Chair. Representative Rivera, that would probably be the case.
I think though there's a different math at play. See, this is the
And
assessed
I don't,
value. This
Mr.
is not
Chairman,
market value. And
Yeah.
so when you reduce that 9.5 to this, whatever it is, 8.3, that's on the assessed value. That's not market value and growth of market value. So it's a significant deal. And it's a big thing. I mean, it's a big deal. So I don't know. So I appreciate you bringing it. I think it's another one of these concepts we got to talk about, but this is a true tax cut. There's no doubt about it. And, okay, any other comments, Representative Storr?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Allred, as you may recall, the constitutional amendment also calls for pulling out primary owner-occupied residences as a subclass of the residential class. Would you be open to the idea of having this reduction in assessment apply just to that one? So it would exclude second homes?
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, and Representative Storr. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions of the sponsor? Okay, appreciate your presentation and stand by. We'll be hopefully working the bill soon. Are there any public comment? Please come forward. We have 4 seats. Fill them up if you have public comment. Director, I think you should come up. Probably got a question. Sorry, come to a meeting, you might get called on. That goes for all of you, huh? Now.
If you don't have one, I have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Representative Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in the hypothetical situation, the constitutional amendment passes. This is in effect. It triggers. My ultimate question is, does the legislature then in the 2025 session have time before the tax year starts to, I'm just guessing we would manipulate the commercial rates, agricultural rates, to do that, or to mitigate the $41 million hit that this would do?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Zwanitzer, no. Once the constitutional amendment passes, it is under the purview of the legislature then to assign these levels of assessment for each of the 4 classes then. And to the point of Representative Storr, then if you wanted to go further and do owner occupied, if you do deem it appropriate to do owner occupied, the legislature will definitely need to come in and decide what that application process is, those types of things, because we, again, don't know which homes are owner occupied. But as far as administratively, changing the level of assessment is an easy change in our statewide CAMA system. We just plug in 8.3 for all of those abstract codes that you've heard so much about. The one thing that we've continued to say, even with the constitutional amendment, we really haven't defined what we consider residential. We've just talked about, through, 1 through 4 unit structures. So right now, as this reads, and based on how the State Board of Equalization looks at property, right now, we do look at property to 4-family as being residential in this state. So as this is written, we would be applying the level of assessment of 8.3 up to 4-plexes. And then the other piece that would be the all other property, that if that's left at 9.5%, so a 5-plex and above is going to be at that 9.5% based on this legislation.
So my question is, if that disparity, we'll call it a difference, exists, and it's a $41 million, well, it's more than that, so it's 30, 40, 50, I don't know, $80 million, 87.1. And we don't need to call it a hit, but an $87 million difference. Is there time for the legislature to come in our 2025 session and, not that we would, but we could increase commercial or increase agricultural or even industrial, well, you're going to keep it within 4%, in order for it not to hit the school foundation fund? Or,
Mr. Chairman and Representative Swanser, you would have to backdate the bill. So everything is assessed and taxed as the statutes exist January 1st. So this bill kicks in January 1, 2025. If you meet then again in a legislative session, you'd have to do it quickly, but you could change those levels on the other classes of property and backdate the bill.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Director. Anybody else, any public testimony on this bill? Okay. Okay, see none online? Okay, we're going to close public testimony. Members, what's your pleasure on House Bill 103?
Move the bill.
Been moved by Representative Northrup,
Second.
second by Representative Byron. Okay, let's flip over to page 2, really, is where the action's at. Are there any amendments? No amendments? Okay. What's your pleasure? We want to talk about it some more?
I have
Okay.
an amendment.
You have, okay, I didn't know you had an amendment. Go ahead, please.
So my amendment is to, if we're going to do this, is to backfill so that our counties aren't hammered. So if we're gonna cut $87 million in revenue that way, my motion is to add the backfill.
Okay, so that'd be a different section, probably a new section 2, and then renumber 2 to 3. And then I'm just gonna write add the backfill. Okay. That'd be general fund dollars, okay. You have that, Ms. Jeffrey? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded by Representative Northrup. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, a question. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? No. Chair's in doubt. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That motion passed. Okay, 5 out of 9. Are there any other amendments?
Mr. Chairman.
Discussion briefly?
Oh.
Okay, in our time, we're at 1:24. We're going to keep working.
I do have a proposed
Oh,
amendment.
you do? Very good. Please bring it.
Conceptually, just what we talked about a minute ago, which is to apply this, the 8.3% to the subclass of primary owner occupied residential rather than residential on the whole.
Okay, so if a person in Casper owns 10 homes and rents 9 of them, it's just going to apply to the primary residence.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a second? Or if this is your second home in Lincoln County and you're,
And your other home is
got
in
it.
Florida.
okay, it's been seconded, I'll quit talking. Any discussion? Representative Zwanitzer.
So I'm just making sure I heard it correctly. We do have the power currently to determine an owner-occupied resident, or we do not if this were to go into effect? Could I get Ms. Henson?
She said before she'd have to do applications for everybody.
You do have, I know I missed this morning, so we would have to do applications or affidavits or something with a little bit of,
Director Hanson, make sure we get a
I
little clarity
just want to
on this.
make sure it's doable for next tax year, or if it's not.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Zwanitzer, so the constitutional amendment provides for this subclass of owner occupied. And so if that were to pass, then we have the authority to treat, based on ownership, to treat those properties differently. As far as we have to identify them first.
Right.
And so we anticipate that there would be approximately 174,000 applications that we would need to process. So it would be tough to do that for 2025. But if it's backfilled, we're okay because it doesn't impact that budget process.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Question being called. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. I think that amendment's been adopted with a lot of enthusiasm. Okay? You have that, Ms. Jeffrey? We'll work it out. Yeah, it's, okay, any other amendments to the bill? Representative Zwanitzer.
Discussion?
Brief discussion.
Thank you for brief discussion. My concern is we're putting something in place this year, whether or not the constitutional amendment happens, and then if it does get voted on and passes, then we have some interesting things that have to happen quickly come December, January, February in session to, I'm not sure if I want to use the word balance everything, but to ensure everything is correct. And I'm just a little worried this is premature when we could spend all year here as an interim committee, I would say, having more discussion and ensuring that our rates, I just don't see a world where we're going to go to 8.3 and you're not going to likely increase a commercial rate or an ag rate, or something's got to give somewhere in some program, and triggering it now without a lot more conversation on unintended expectations or consequences. So I don't know if anyone else shares that concern. I think it's a great idea. I think it's probably going to happen. I just would appreciate getting ready for it all interim, and even if this does pass, to make sure we have a plan in place that we can quickly implement in 2025 to stabilize everything.
Before we take action on this bill, okay? You have, nobody? Okay, I think, committee, what's your pleasure?
I think we moved it. We moved it in second.
Okay, so we're ready to vote. No more amendments. So I think we're ready to vote on House Bill 103 as amended. Please take the roll, Ms. Jeffrey.
Representative Bear,
Aye?
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strzok,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer,
Aye.
and Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
The bill passes, 9
Okay.
ayes.
we'll get those amendments, and then this bill needs to be re-referred as well.
Okay.
Okay, so mark that, if you would, please, on your list. Okay, the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 203. So I'm going to go down in front in the vice chair, and I've got a little handout that's going to be coming to you. And I believe. Remember those early, so.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for copies.
Thank you.
Ready? All right, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. If you will introduce yourself and go into and explain to us House Bill 203.
Okay, Steve Harshman, Casper, Shoshone County native, representative of House District 37. Okay, and I gave you a handout. It gives you a little summary of sales tax in Wyoming. Briefly, number one is we have one of the lowest sales tax burdens in the country because we have so many exemptions. And it's currently at $22.40 per thousand income, lowest in the United States, effective rate of about 2.4%. South Dakota, by comparison, is $31 per thousand income. Number two, the Economic Analysis Division of our state estimated for this bill, three-person family in Wyoming in 2022, annual income of $68,000, owned a home of $320,000, pay about $1,200 property tax, or sales tax, I should say, and roughly $2,100 residential property tax. So this bill would decrease their property tax by that amount to zero and increase their sales tax roughly $450. So I just like to say it, you're probably going to, the average Wyoming family is going to spend maybe 500 more bucks out of their right pocket, but they're going to get a deposit of 2,000 to 3,000 in their left pocket. So it'll be a tremendous tax cut. And I think as much as anything, you know, obviously we've heard from elderly people on fixed incomes who have their homes paid off that are having, and I've heard from plenty. And as a native of this state, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people, answered thousands of emails, and I've talked to a lot of people I know. I hear a lot of stories. People, yeah, I used to be able to pay in one payment. Now I have to divide it up in two. And I'd much rather pay some sales tax gradually along the way. But I think also for young people just starting out, the escrow payment's going to drop 150, 250 bucks a month. That's significant. And get people in started in home ownership. Number three there, our sales tax burden, as I said, is one of the lowest because we have exemptions on groceries, rent, fuel, insurance, childcare, prescriptions, your water bill, cable, and other subscriptions, to name a few. And sales tax, of course, is a tax on consumption. It's a transaction tax that we choose to participate in. And we give folks basic opportunity, whether to, you know, depending on what you want to buy. Now, just talking about who remits sales tax, our NAICS codes are really saying which industries send the most tax in. Retail trades, 39%. So if you or I buy a shirt or a coat, or a tourist in Jackson buys a t-shirt, that's retail trade. Hotels, restaurants, hospitality is number two. It's incredible how that's growing. Nearly 4 million visitors to our state. 85% of that's paid by out-of-staters. About 10% of the sales tax is paid by people traveling through, non-residents. It's really incredible. Every state tries to do this. Wyoming is expert in having out-of-staters pay a large portion of our tax burden, whether it's fuel tax, whether it's the severance tax on minerals, those kind of things. So it's been really incredible. The mineral industry pays roughly 12%. I always like to say 10 to 15%. They pay half our taxes in Wyoming, but over 53% of the taxes. And then legacy minerals pay really another 25 or to 30% off the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. So I've held them harmless in this bill, and I've reached out to the mineral companies, and you'll see that in the bill. County treasurers who collect tax. It's probably the biggest thing that any of us buy other than a home is when we buy a vehicle. But I don't buy a vehicle every fall. Some people do, but I pay property taxes every fall. And then I think there's an all other categories, about 6%, and then utilities. And I tell you, I think and that's minerals paying, big corporations paying taxes on utilities as well, and you and I. And of course, there's bills out there to kind of change that structure to eliminate sales tax on our utilities. And so these are the folks that really have these primary imposition statutes, the sale of it, oil field work. Representative Alaman, he charges sales tax at the wellhead, the work he does, and prepared food and lodging. But most of the rest of the businesses really have no imposition statutes or some kind of exemption. Our manufacturing exemptions are very generous. So again, number 5, I've mentioned that, just talked the other night to a person in this business, and they said, yeah, 85 to 90% is paid by visitors. And half of our statewide lodging tax comes from Teton County. It's incredible. And so again, number 6 there, out-of-state companies, this has been a major change. 20% of our sales tax is collected by out-of-state, and that's primarily online. This wasn't even a category until we changed our law with streamlined sales tax and South Dakota lawsuit that really changed all this and made it more of a level playing field with our local retailers, but mainly online companies and other companies. And again, the other part of that is really big box. That's where we collect most of our sales tax. And so it's half our sales tax really is being collected by big national companies, because we a lot of times think mom and pops, and that's part of it certainly. And small business in Wyoming is the key and our largest employer, but a lot of this sales tax are big companies that collect it. Okay, and so then about 58% of our licenses are not even located in Wyoming. Now, we've had that little bill, remember our committee bill that had a little streaming tax that we killed, and I brought it back. I think it's whatever that bill number is, we should probably hear it. Hopefully we can clip that down a little bit. Okay, here's some examples of tax rates in the West and Midwest. And you can see the tax rates, but in addition to that tax rate, it's the low burden as well, because all these states tax food. All of them tax every service. I think South Dakota taxes 150 some services. We tax 50, roughly. Texas, over 200 services they tax. And so you can see those rates. And if this bill becomes law, that's where Wyoming's rate would be. You can see it there right in the middle. So, okay, so flipping over, or I guess that's it on that. Can I take you through the bill? You're like begging, please quit talking. Take us through the bill.
Please do, Chairman Horstman.
Okay, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So if you flip over to page 2, wanted to really get this bill started right away. I didn't want to wait till 25. And so the soonest we could, I mean, the idea is, and I said this on the floor in my little 2-minute intro, but the idea is really to shift from this 1800 tax system really to the new tax we got in the 1900s, that it's even been modernized in the last 7 years. Property tax is the only tax that was originally in our Constitution, and we actually had it in our territorial days. And 1932, I think we amended our Constitution to allow sales tax. And of course, we're not going to have an income tax. And so one of these people I talked to, a gentleman in Torrington, grew up in Lusk, and he's a veteran, he's moved back here. And he's just like, I just never really owned my home. And I said, well, it's part of this whole social contract, police, firefighters, roads, all those things, and schools. And he said, I don't have a problem with taxes, but it's this part, I don't own my home. And I can actually be forced out of my home if I don't pay them. And so we talked a little more. I said, let me run the numbers on this. I mean, we've got a couple billion in ad valorem tax. I know most of that's mineral, but I was thinking in my mind that this is going to be 4 or 5 pennies, and then I thought of this $1 million exemption. Used to know that 98% of the homes were under $1 million. And so I asked LSO, I asked for a little research on this, and came back really about 1.8 pennies to grant a $1 million exemption, which covers 97% of the residential homes in Wyoming. I said, you got to be kidding me. And I said, well, I thought it'd be 4 or 5 pennies. And so I said, let's draft this bill. We got to have this conversation. and you talk to anybody, talk to any of your friends or anybody you know, everybody I've talked to has said, I'd much rather pay a couple pennies. If I go to Denver, it's 10 cents. I go, and so those things. So anyway, I'll take you through this bill. I think I've got some proposed amendments that were brought up in the 1-minute opposition, and then members of the House came up and talked to me about things, and that's in your handout. I think that make the bill better. And then I do think this local pennies issue, I think I've got a solution in there, but somehow we got to keep thinking on that and working on it. And I'll talk about that when we get to that. So I'll quit talking so much again. Moving. So
We're walking
flipping
through the
over.
bill, so page two.
Page 2, line 17, Madam Vice Chair. If you go page 2, line 17, as I said, I wanted to get this going in 2024. Well, you can't institute, because we're going to pay for this, right? We're not going to, it's what we do in Wyoming. We pay our bills. That's the first thing. I mean, we got a balanced budget. We pay all our bills. So we're going to pay for this and change the tax structure. And so we start with a tax, this replacement tax on July 1st. Well, it only generates enough, interestingly enough, for a $200,000 exemption in 24. So that'll be about $1,400 off everybody's tax bill, every resident in 2024 with 6 months of this replacement tax. And then if you go over to page 3, committee members, and paragraph C, you can see it's that same thing, single-family residential property in the structure. And then you'll see in the last part of the paragraph, and the associated improved land. So this includes the land as well. Okay, and then talking about the taxation rate, when you go 39.15.104, this is sales tax. And we'll go 39.16 here in a bit, which is use tax. It's sales and use tax. But you'll see that rate that is the statewide rate is increased from 4 to 6. And that is on what page, or line 19 on page 3. So then you flip over, it's existing statute, a couple corrections of references. And then you look on what happens with this 2-cent state tax. Right now with our 4-cent tax, we give some 30% back to the locals, 70% of the state, minus the admin fees. But this all flows to an account in the treasurer's office. And you can see the account on the number, line 11 and 12 is created, the property tax reduction and replacement account. All this 2-cent flows in there. Okay, and it sits there and it can be invested by the treasurer and can gain a little money. And then any amounts you go down the bottom of page 4, distributed by the county treasurers in the same manner. So the county treasurer then will send the bill basically to the state treasurer and say, this is how much is owed because of what is lost with this $1 million exemption. And so then that check is sent to the county treasurer and he or she distributes it in the exact same manner in which they currently distribute the mill monies in the same time of the year. Okay, now going over to page 5. So that's really an easy part. And I know some of the comments on the floor were, oh, we got all these flows and flips and tips. This is just a pretty simple account. It's going to sit there. Instead of sitting in the county treasurer, it's going to sit in the state treasurer and then be redistributed by your county treasurer as usual. Now, what if something happened and we just didn't have quite enough? We were 50 million short. So that's on line 6 on page 5. Each county shall be proportionally reduced based on the amount of revenue available. And I'll just tell you, when we looked at this, and the leader of LSO Fiscal, who we all respect, he said, if you were linking this to another revenue stream, I'd be a little nervous. But he said the sales tax growth is just really, it's just on this steady climb that, it's similar to the property tax it's been over the last 20 years. And so felt comfortable about that piece. And so that's that part. And then there's a little piece on 13, 14, 15, and 16. And I went through several iterations of this bill and talking to locals and working people that are affected by this. Well, what about if your county votes to increase 4 mills to build a rec center? Should statewide sales tax pay for that? I don't think so, right? I mean, that's a local decision. If you want to raise your own taxes to build a rec center. And there's really no way, is what I'm told, and the director, if I'm getting it wrong, can correct me, really to dig that out right now. But the system we have is undergoing modernization, and in 2026, we'll be able to separate those. Now, for anybody to go on and put a bonded mill levy on, you're not gonna be able to do it in this year, right? It just it takes a while to get that done. So it's not like, I don't think we're gonna incentivize the whole state to go out and run a bunch of bonded mill levies, so they can, but that part is in there, just so, I wanted to make sure. Okay, then starting on Romanet 2, page 5, this is the minerals rebate program. Okay, so it talks about a company that pays, a person who pays severance taxes and also pays sales and use taxes, 3915 and 3916. So then you flip over to page 6. And I reached out to the oil and gas and mining folks. And because they're obviously concerned, they pay over half our taxes, but you buy $1 million shovel, you don't want to raise the tax on them. And so this rebate program would be at the same time of the year when they're doing their mineral audits, the whole thing. So I don't think from what I was told, not a massive burden on them to apply for a rebate to keep them neutral in this. We don't want to raise taxes on our largest taxpayers and do that. So that part's in there, and that goes through page 6.
Chairman Harshman.
Yeah.
I don't exactly know what to do. I apologize for interrupting you, and I know there's a lot of people in the room interested, but we are already late to being back on the floor.
I thought it was 2 o'clock.
They said 1:45.
I got a good memory, but it's short. No, I think we're just probably gonna have to shut her down, I think.
Yeah, and like I say, I apologize, and I'm thinking, I mean, I know it's Friday, and the assessors and probably other people, I don't know, are wanting to go home, but
Maybe take a little poll. How many folks want to comment on this bill? Want to come up here and provide comment? Because I think we could just have you come comment. And then we could finish this on,
There you go.
and then just
Let's take public
just
comment.
pause.
yeah, we could pause this and then take public comment, and then we could come back Monday at noon.
We can come
again.
back Monday. Yeah, that's what,
What's that? How many folks are traveling home?
Hopefully.
Yeah,
I thought that was a joke.
yeah.
I was hoping that was a joke.
Okay, so folks so you don't, is there anybody that can't be here Monday that would like to testify on that? We certainly want to hear, and then, so we'll just pause this and lay this on well, it hasn't been moved yet. We'll just pause
Just,
and adjourn.
we'll just adjourn and continue, so we'll hear the continuation. I mean, was there real appetite for this evening? That was a joke, okay, okay, good, thank you. So we will finish hearing 203 public comment, let Chairman Harshman finish on Monday, so we're adjourned.